Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the virtual chapter for October 2019. I am Michael Watson, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Karen Ann. Say hello, Karen.
Hi there. How are you? Thanks for joining us tonight.
It's great to be here. We're going to have a really special evening tonight. Our guest is Jason Linett, I believe is his name. I think you'll get to know him a little bit better, and we'll get with him in just a couple minutes. But we do have some announcements that we want to share with you. I don't know, Karen, I sent it to you so last minute that I have no idea if you saw the sheet that I sent over with some.
I looked for it just as I sat down, and there was nothing yet. But I'm going to look now.
Certainly my fault. As we're starting out, one of the things that I'd just like to mention is that, this is a chapter of IACT and IMDHA officially, but it is also recognized, appreciated, and CEUs are offered for your attendance here by the ICBCH and the IHF and who else? I like to say, and other friendly hypnosis organizations.
Yes.
If you're in a group other than IACT and IMDHA, you can probably get credits for being here as well. So you might want to keep track of those, and however it is that you normally go about declaring them with your organization, go ahead and do that. But I did want to mention that because we are an IACT IMDHA thing, IACT and IMDHA has just had an incredible weekend. I've spent more time in front of this monitor than
right.
in the last week. But we had the Galaxy of the Stars, and we had 4 presenters. We're doing this like a couple of times a year. This time we had, we were originally going to have Melissa Roth, and sadly she wasn't able to be with us. She had some family emergencies and stuff to deal with. So Patricia Scott came in and presented on medical hypnosis. And Patty runs the specialty certification course for IMDHA in medical hypnosis, so she was just great for that. We had Sean Michael Andrews present on doing dynamic presentations, and a whole bunch of inductions, all sorts of things. It was a wonderful presentation. And we had Will Horton. Some of you may know Will Horton, and he did a great program on working with addictions. And then we had Juan Acosta talk about being a professional hypnodontist and all of the various facets of that work. So it was really special, and a lot of hours to sit in front of a monitor. So I would encourage you, if you see the Galaxy coming up, next time around, you might want to join it. And also the Galaxy is recorded and available through IACT and IMDHA's website on a flash drive that'll be published in about a week or so from now. So you can get that if you have any interest in it. But Karen, the big news, Karen has got the big news, because we're just all getting geared up to spend some time in the Windy City, my home, and tell us all about it.
Mid-America Hypnosis Conference. It's very exciting. It'll be the 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th officially for the weekend. Michael will be there 2 days ahead doing a pre-conference on core transformations. I start a certification course the 2 days ahead, 16th and 17th. And that's a great certification course, because it's going to start there at that conference. Many people that I would love my students to be exposed to will be teaching at that conference, and they're required to go watch them present and learn a bunch of different things from different instructors. That's going to be very cool. Anyway, I'll be doing a lot of teaching. Michael will be doing a lot of teaching. Let's see who's here that's going to be there. Jason Linett, of course, will be there. We're looking forward to that. He's going to be talking about how to do a best-selling book, which of course I'm sure we'll hear more about here tonight. Joseph Onesta is going to be there talking about homeostasis and oh my God, ostasis. I don't remember exactly what it all is, but Joseph will talk about that kind of stuff. And if I missed somebody that I see here, Kaz Riley is going to be doing a sexual freedom certification course. Wow, it's going to be way cool. So that's Mid-America. Can you tell I'm excited? It's coming up in just a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. So, and just other notable.
Did I mention the core transformations, by the way?
I beg your pardon?
Did I mention you're doing core transformations in Chicago?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And you know what else you might want to tell them? You might want to let them know that I am doing core transformation in Chicago as well for the 2 days before the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference.
If you have ever wanted to train with Michael Watson on core transformations, let me tell you something. You could do just those 2 days. You're not even required to stay for the conference. So I'm just letting you know, if you're anywhere around Chicago and you want to do that training, Michael's going to be doing it there.
Right. Thank you so much. So by the way, and other things just coming up, I'm just looking at like November, in this kind of period right now. The ICBH is having its online conference on November 9th and 10th. I'm teaching a virtual hypnotist class, the virtual trainer class. A bunch of you who are part of the chapter know this. Many of you have taken the virtual hypnotist course from me. And there's a variation of that, which is virtual trainer. And it's about how to use Zoom and stuff to do some kind of training things like using PowerPoints and handling the breakout rooms and the various kind of things that are more specific to training as opposed to working one-on-one. So if you have any interest in that, just, check in with me, flhypno@outlook.com, or at the virtual chapter, you'll be able to see stuff about it as well if you go to the Facebook group. But that's coming up November 19th, 26th, and December 3rd. It's just an hour and a half each of 3 Monday nights, I think it is. It's either Monday or Tuesday nights. I'd have to look at the calendar. But an hour and a half each of those nights. Walmart prices, $65. And a real thorough introduction to, what you can do in training online. And I also have a mentorship in NLP that's limited to just 8 people. There's just a couple slots left, but there's 2 4-day segments here in Orlando, November 15th to the 18th and January 10th through the 13th. So if anybody's particularly interested in training in NLP with me, get in touch with me. So that's a whole lot of commercials, isn't it?
It really is.
It really is a little
I would have keyboard past a lot of this, I got to be honest.
So, well, since we've done that to death,
and on that note,
to introduce our guests here in a moment, and I want to tell you a couple things. I've known Jason for a number of years now. I'm guessing probably about 6 or 7, or from I think I met you in I'm sure I met you in Las Vegas, and. One of the things that Jason does, for anybody that doesn't know Jason, he has one of the best podcasts that you will ever want to listen to with regard to hypnosis stuff. And Jason, just to let you know, I just listened the other day. It's amazing that you can actually do these things with earphones while you're mowing the lawn and stuff,
Yep.
And so I listened to the podcast that you did with Joseph Onesta. Karen just mentioned Joe a minute ago. About working with difficult clients. It was really very, very good. So just loved it. Check it out, man. The Work Smart podcast. And the things that I know about Jason is he has a theatrical background and found his way somewhere through a journey that I'm going to ask him a couple of questions about, to Virginia Hypnosis that he operates now. He does a lot of training and is at conferences all over. Just came back from Down Under. And then he's written this book that has the word "Work Smart" on the cover, and that's kind of why we got you here, Jason. So say hello to the crowd.
Hello, crowd. Good to be here. Second time offender, right?
Exactly right. So I actually just had to take that online, just right here in front of the same monitor. I had to take that improv comedy driver's course. I got myself into some trouble recently. So I know all about online education. Jason, I'm thrilled to have you here, and I think I just want to start out because I know there's some people that may or may not know too much about you, and I haven't really heard the story from you. But I do know that you started out in theater, and that somehow or another you found your way not only from theater into hypnosis, but then from hypnosis into really a business modeler in hypnosis and a trainer and all that stuff. So I'm just really curious to hear the official version of how that switch happened and what took you away from theater into hypnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, so good to be here with you and Karen and everyone else as well, which I'll tell the story in a slightly different way, which let's put all the subtext beneath it, which is that as a teenager, I had a hobby of learning magic tricks. And I lost the interest in that because if I could really make these coins appear at my fingertips, why did they have to be 1890s Morgan silver dollars? Well, because you can rub those coins together and they don't make noise. Well, that's the method, but why would I logically have to do that? And the same being true if I could do this magic trick with cards, who do you know that actually carries around playing cards? So there was a frustration with the exposition aspect of it, and here I have this and here I have that. And about that point is when I was at college, I was more interested in how things worked on stage rather than being the one on stage, which is where I was going through education to be a theatrical stage manager, a career I actually did for 5 years at the time of being a card-carrying member of Actors Equity Association, which that organizes the management as well as the actors, which basically put, that job is to take all those creative people and make them get along. And right there is your foundation of psychological education. So burned out beautifully from that career, by the way, which from that, though, came the aspect of managing unique personalities, to say it politely, managing the ability to call the cues of a show for going on 3 months, 8 shows a week, and have the closing performance have the same integrity as the opening performance, which take that right there and the ability to now go, okay, I've seen a couple of thousand people over the years, and it's just as fresh now as when I got started. The mindset came about, though, was that the aspects of looking at the business side of things, how do we actually get the clients coming into the office, was something that I found to be rather straightforward. It kind of just made sense to go out into the community, talk about what you do, position it as being something that you're passionate about, and represent it professionally. And by accident, that's going to bring in a lot of clients. And just as I started to break outside of the previous hypnotic bubbles I was inside of and go to various conventions, I was hearing that, and this is true not just of our community, this is any wellness profession, that I counted on my hand in Australia, and this is happening everywhere. Oh, I'm more of a clinician than I am a business person, so I'm probably not going to come to that talk. And I'm already seeing a whole bunch of heads nodding in our lovely gallery view that is Zoom. And that discovery that, no, it's got to be your hypnosis practice as well as your hypnosis business. Because what good are these techniques unless that person's actually in the chair doing the work for you? What good are these techniques if you're not attracting those people who are the right fit for the services that, let's say this, you do best, which we'll talk about that as one of the bullet points here in this presentation. So it's where, to fast forward the story, this is where I then launched the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, which were somewhere up around 240 or so episodes. At last count, more than 500,000 downloads in more than 80 countries, but who's counting? And looking at the ability to take a message to a much bigger audience. And it's where, over the years, seeing clients, we suddenly start to fall into those things that we feel we do best. So working with entrepreneurs, working with small business owners who had fears of public speaking became a specific category that I did a lot of work in. And just simply put, this is where those people, nowadays, you don't want to own just the first result on a search function on Google. You want to own the whole first page. So they were looking up what I was doing and finding things like the book that I put out, finding the podcast, finding some of the writings, some things like Hypnotic Business Systems. And suddenly it became this cool dynamic where these clients were coming in, and yes, there were fears. Yes, there were issues to be resolved. But at the same time, their messaging needed some, as we call it, punching up. So it became a bit of a split approach. So it's where nowadays it's a bit of a 3, if not 4 ring circus of the time I spend seeing clients, the time I spend teaching courses. I'm jumping into the next Work Smart Hypnosis live event on Thursday, and some of those folks are here tonight, jumping into conventions and taking the message of ethical influence out into the business world as well. So to look at it from, again, back to that origin story, the things were not motivated. And that's what helped me to lose the interest in at least the magic that I was, learning at the time. But to look at what it is we're doing now, your service can change people's lives. It's a matter of having the right messaging, the right emotional landscape underneath it, so people hear your message, but not just hear it, believe it along with you, and now they're excited to actually work with you.
Yeah. It's sort of funny because in almost a mirror to what you said, I have a friend who was also a stage manager in Chicago, and one of the things that I remember about her that I always remember about her is that somewhere in the middle of me looking at the beautiful world of theater and loving everything that I saw, there was something happening. I can't remember exactly what it was that didn't especially thrill her. But the reason that it didn't thrill her was punctuated by the statement, "Why do you think they call it show business?" You know, and of course you sort of took the same thing into hypnosis. You know,
You do it because you love it, and then comes the 9:30 a.m. student matinee.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can enjoy being in the audience now.
This may throw us a little bit off track, but I got to throw this in for a second, because you don't just run a 3 or 4 ring circus, Jason. You run at least another ring that I know of that is one of the things I'm most proud of you about. And I love this, man. I will go on record as being, you know, a Jasonite. I'm a big fan, have been for a long time. But you also spend as much time, I mean, if you're running 5 rings, a 5th of that time at least goes to your family. Mm-hmm. You spend time having fun and doing things for you and in a life outside of any of this business world. And that's part of your whole MO, balance. I just find that so amazing that you find a way to balance all of that.
If only that was point number 2 of our presentation this evening.
Well, I know it's not.
No, it is. It is. No, it's where looking at, you know, the line from one of the classic books in the business world is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, spelled like the baby food. And he talks about working on your business, not just in your business. So the aspect of, you know, sometimes there's moments to, let's call it, play with the house's money. We can experiment with things in our business. And I may do this at a time where I can look at my calendar and see I'm scheduled out a couple of weeks in advance. So let me throw a wrench in the tire and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, then I'm caught up to where I am right now. Or to have that ability, you know, I mentioned surgery that my wife went through this past week, which was scheduled and everything went great. But that ability to then look at the calendar and go, okay, I'm taking that week off. And it's the same mindset we would have if we're going to a convention, the same mindset we would have if we're attending a class, teaching a class, that personal development side. What good are all these things unless you can step away from it and come back, which I'll make the story brief, but I think you'll see why I share it in this context. Even if you don't have a theatrical background, you've heard stand so the audience can see your face. And this is that line that's drilled into us. So here we are, it's a professional production that I was involved with. And the actor is this younger guy. He looks like he's 16, so he's playing a teenager. And the director is telling him, you're going to stand over there with your back to the audience. And clearly this bothered this guy. I mean, imagine in our modern era, he's $120,000 in debt with grad school. This is his first professional job. Mom and dad maybe didn't want him to be an actor. And first job, there he is, back to the audience. And he's trying to come up with all these reasons to stand with his face to the audience. What if I stand over here? What if I help out at the table? And the director is this multiple Tony Award-winning director and gets up and walks over to this guy and goes, I'm giving you a gift, because the moment that you turn and face the audience, everyone's eyes are going to look at you. You have the line that sets the conflict of this play in motion. And by having you stand what's called upstage and then stand to face the audience, at the moment you say that line, we're going to guarantee everybody hears you make that statement, because if they miss that, none of this is going to make any sense. I'm giving you a gift, because now you get to make a second entrance. Mm. And this actor loved that. And the anecdote is this actor also then spent the rest of the rehearsal process trying to turn his back on the audience. So we do some of our best work when we step away from things, and then we come back with that fresh set of eyes where we can walk away and then come back and look at everything we're doing and go, you know, we often unfortunately fool ourselves into productivity that, oh, I'm so busy. And you've been refreshing your email 40,000 times that day.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, all right. So the title of the book, Work Smart. How is it? Work Smart in
business.
In business, is that right?
Yeah. Work Smart Business Lessons Learned from Hypnotizing 250,000 people and Building $1 million brand. So check that out simply online, worksmartbusiness.com. That'll redirect you all the places. We got a thumbs up from Bob Martell, so we're in business.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So here's the question, and you've begun to answer it already, but you know, we're tired of working ways that don't work. You know, people try things, and you're right. On the one hand, you get to experiment a little bit, but on the other hand, the difference between working harder and smarter has to do with being able to make choices that are educated and that, you know, taking advantage of what you've learned through all of the all of the other stuff that you've done. So I'm really curious to hear, you know, when we talk about working smart in hypnosis, there are two ways, and the way that I posed the question to originally was, you know, what are the things that people do wrong that they've got to find another way to, you know, another way to approach?
Yeah, and kind of put it all together into a bit of a list here of 5 big mistakes that hypnotists make.
Perfect.
And it's where I give you a bit of a pre-frame going into all of this, which is that can you go off and implement everything I'm about to say in the next hour or so and put it into use and have it ready to launch tomorrow? No. Yet to look at it from the perspective that for those of you that are brand new to this work, to have some systems in place and basically not have to reinvent the wheel. That's part of what I'm sharing with you here. On the other side, as I'm looking around, I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces, people who are already working in hypnosis. And it's where sometimes that little bit of a refinement to do something in a slightly more streamlined approach to get the result faster and more consistently and have that ability to either scale up the business or, as we've clearly already talked about, walk away from the business as well. So in that first big mistake that people make in business, let's kind of get metaphorical here. And I'll say that they need to overcome superhero syndrome. And we can best define this. This is that game that nearly anybody in business falls into, where they get into this mindset that they have to do everything. And looking around, I'm seeing a bunch of familiar faces, which means I'm allowed to now make this next statement. That as I look through here, a lot of you are phenomenal hypnotists. Some of you are just kind of getting started along your journeys. And you're outstanding hypnotists. You're on the cusp of learning some amazing stuff. You are crappy website designers. Pay someone else. So to look at what is it that your role is, which the catchphrase here for me has become an interesting one, that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I'm about to alienate everybody in this audience except for Scott Babb. Because back in the theater career, I began as a sound engineer, a sound designer. So I learned originally on Cool Edit Pro 2000, which was a sound software that came out in 1998 because 2000 was right around the corner, which, by the way, many years later was bought out by Adobe, and now it's Adobe Audition, and now I know where all the buttons are. But I know where the buttons are, but you know what? Someone else can do that task better than I can. So rather than be that person in the trenches doing all the work, and I'll simply describe as a couple of outsourcing strategies here, because it's where I meet a lot of people who say, well, I've tried outsourcing and it didn't go well. Well, here's the wake-up call. It meant that your instructions were not as well crafted as they could have been. The message is always that show is better than tell. Nearly every website, nearly every product, nearly every flyer, every business card of mine began on a sheet of paper with a black marker, and I'm drawing exactly what I need, and then taking out my phone, shooting a video of it, and narrating exactly what I want that to be, and then making use of services, whether I like the service Upwork.com, which is an international community of outsourcers. Some people use Fiverr, Fiverr.com to some success. I tend to like Upwork better. But this mindset of finding someone else, look at it in terms of this dynamic of specialties. In this audience here, your specialty is being the hypnotist. Your specialty is working with your clients and helping them to get outstanding results. And to have that willingness to spend the same amount of time, energy, and even money that you've spent in terms of learning this craft, learning these skills, to then pay someone else. I mean, I've been at conventions where by the time someone's done, yes, the convention might be $300 or $400, but throw on top of that your hotel, throw on top of that your travel, throw on top of that the fact that you're not in your office actually working at that time, and that number goes up even higher. And yet they're spending 5 hours in Photoshop to build a business card that looks horrible. So here's the mindset. Here's kind of the sequencing. If I can put everything we're about to talk about in terms of a mindset, it's always that of building systems. Look at from the nature of how a relationship starts. I did not walk up to my then interest at the time back in college and say, you and I are going to get married and have kids. Now that we've been married for almost 11 years, and I know her sense of humor, it might have worked. But instead, I at one point asked her permission if I could ask her out, because I was chicken. Then I actually asked her out. Then we started dating. Then we eventually moved in together. Then we got the dog. Then I proposed and we got married, the kids, and there's the story. So to look at the same natural shape of a relationship, that very often what I'm going to do if I need to outsource a project, I'm going to find someone and I'm going to hire somebody who's more qualified than what I need. And I'll give you an example of this. I will find a website designer to redesign my logo. Why? Because if I can build this new website with this person, I want to build with what I like to call a micro task. Let me go on that first date and see how this goes. If you can't make that micro task of the logo work, how well is the rest of this project going to go? The same as you had Sean Michael Andrews on a while ago, and he talks about, using suggestibility tests to do a powerful demonstration. And you've done your finger magnets, you've done your light and heavy arms, you've done your hand lock, and here's this guy in the crowd just sitting there like this and not having a bit of any of it. Well, can you imagine which person you're probably not going to call up for the volunteer? We're going to want to stack that expectation. So I'm going to seek out the website designer and begin with the sequence of redesign my logo. Hey, the first date went great. Let's keep this thing going. You know what? I'd like to look at you for doing my new website. How about you just build like a graphic drawing of what the new website could look like? Now we have that in motion. Now we continue that relationship to go, you know what, make some of the buttons on this site functional. Then from there, build out the entire site. So far, we've kind of been in like a by the task type project, at which point now we can pivot. And here's the money-making secret. You now ask the person, if I kept you on retainer and just paid you as I needed, what would the hourly rate be? Most of them on Upwork would say only about $30. Here's the next step. Great. Could I pay you $60 an hour for 3 hours for us to get on Zoom together and you show me how to do basic updates on my own website? Now we can go in and put on a blog post. Now we can go in and announce the next class, change the dates for an event, whatever function it may be. And basically the strength of this is that it always comes back to relationships. So as the shape of things that I'm doing right now, I've got a lot of different projects in the works, but here's the person who does all of my web and graphic all my web and graphic stuff. As soon as I finish recording the podcast, it's already in a shared Dropbox folder. It goes off to the editors. They write the show notes. I look at them. I do the final review. I listen to it with everyone else on Thursday. So to look at everything by asking yourself, how do I do this once? And even better, do I have to be the one to do this? So even expanding this to your own personal life, as we've had a few medical events in recent days, it's the perfect time to go, yeah, let's get a housekeeper to come in and tidy up the house just to make things easier. Which the rule of that becomes, we only can do that if we're spending that time with our kids. We only can do that if we're also, then my wife has a job at home as well. We can use that time for work. So using that time more valuably, you can't do it all yourself. So there's the method to do it all yourself with other people doing it for you.
Nice.
It is nice. That was Michael's. That's right. For just a moment.
Which the strength of that, to throw a side note to that, the strength of that is if you find yourself working with someone and it's not going well, your two most important outsourcing pieces of language, please and thank you. Because as they're doing great work for you, keep them happy. I pay out regular bonuses. And yes, this is something that I'm spending a little bit more than others because there's so many other projects that are in the works, but it doesn't have to be a full-time thing. Here's a person that if I ever update the manual for my Work Smart Hypnosis live class and I suddenly add in new pages, well, here's Erica, and she goes in and she updates the table of contents. And she does that for like $8 because she can do it in a half an hour. Yeah. And I can do it in 2 hours badly.
Yeah, that's wonderful. In fact, the real bonus in hearing that, Jason, is it hadn't occurred to me about costs and how inexpensive that could be. One of the things that happens for me all the time is I've got so many things going on that and the phone is ringing about one thing and meanwhile I'm just trying to tend to too many things for one brain to be able to even wrap itself around, or the half a brain that I work with. And and I keep saying I need a Nikki. You know, when I started training in England with Jamie and his organization, he had a woman named Nikki that worked for him. Jamie did what I've always wanted to do as a trainer. What I always wanted to do is to show up and teach. You know, and I had this great arrangement over there because that's literally it. I mean, they picked me up, they shuttled me to furnished apartments that they kept for me. They brought me to the training in the morning, and all I really did was literally my thing, as you said earlier,
turn on the magic
just being the hypnotist, or in my case, being the trainer at that particular point. And so
I'd share a little personal nuance. I share a quick personal nuance to that you know, there's a line between where we can outsource and also the task of when I like my training event smaller, so I do it here in my office. Now, when we do something bigger, it's down the road at the Holiday Inn Express. And for that one, I just get to show up. But for something in my own space, yes, I've got a cleaning company that comes through and they take care of the office twice a week. But other than that, you know, the task of uploading all the materials of the class to staples.com, and they then deliver all my stuff printed all ready to go and stick it in binders, you know, to recognize here's the line of what I should be doing. And here's the part of where, okay, I shouldn't be the one doing this, which you learn that just by testing it out and figuring it out for yourself.
There are many more jobs in it than there used to be.
Yeah.
As you say, I was stapling or taping flyers to lampposts in the early 80s. And now there is, somebody does have to design a website. Somebody does have to handle the Facebook stuff. Somebody does have to handle, this and this and this. And it's like, I thought I was in this job because what I wanted to do is hypnosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, which is a perfect segue, by the way, into my second point of the 5 biggest mistakes that hypnotists make. Right. Good one. Which is that of managing your own time. And I'm going to address this really in 2 points. We've already talked about the secret third one I was going to reveal now, which was about stepping away from the business, which we've talked about. But let's talk about managing time in terms of not just your business, but also let's bring this conversation into the actual session work as well. And yes, Scott Babb in the chat group just said Jason has a platinum Staples card. They won't let me use coupons there because I already get the best rate. Yeah. And if my biggest fault is using all my Staples rewards on my kids, we're doing all right. So managing time. So let's look, first of all, let's kind of step away from business for a moment and actually talk about the work inside of your sessions. So I love the fact, and even I'm still amused that as much as I'm the business guy, most of my time is still spent seeing clients. For people who look at like my online programs, there's more in my hypnosis training course, Hypnotic Workers, than there are hypnotic business systems, which I go back to the Mick Jagger quote where he goes, yeah, we're in the t-shirt business. We make more of our money from t-shirts than we do music. So really, I'm still more so hypnotist than I am business person, but it all has to go together. There's a challenge that I meet a lot of people in this world who go, someone comes into my session and we've spent about an hour talking about the issue. And mind you, they're not necessarily using pointed conversational change strategies, but just they've been talking about the problem. And suddenly now they're realizing, oh dear, we've got to jump into the session. We've only got about 20 minutes left, which the simple statement becomes, if you set the frame ahead of time, if you do that, you're going to hedge off most of your potential challenges. The same way that, you'd often hear in different, Facebook groups and different forums online or conventions, someone came in for a session and this thing happened. Nearly every pitfall of that session would possibly go back to something that was left out of the pre-talk. So Sales 101, satisfy objections before they arise. So inside of my office forms, I have a very simple document, which are lists, give me a list of some of the benefits you'd like to create, and then walk me through this change you're about to create. A lot of embedded language. What's your goal a month from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? Which means this is a different document, but someone comes in, they filled out the forms in advance. And as it was phrased in Mike Mandel's community the other day, as tech horny as I can often be, I love having physical paper forms, because it has to be an event. You have to sit down and fill it out. And I just get better information. I keep going back and forth between the technical side, but when it's physically written, I get better stuff. So the outcome becomes they're now working with me, whether we're remote or whether they're in my space. Great. Thank you so much for bringing this in. What we'll do is we'll chat through what you've shared here. Then we'll talk about hypnosis, what it is, what it isn't, and then jump into work today to resolve this thing. Sound good? Yes. Which, what have I just now done? I've created a contract with that person, which technically by the time we're to the bottom of this conversation, it's a natural pivot into the pre-talk strategy. So by setting that frame ahead of time, because let's look at it from the perspective of most of our people have never actually done hypnosis. And even if they haven't done it with you. Therefore, it is your ethical responsibility to set the foundation of here's how this is going to work today. The same way that I'm now on the phone with somebody. So great. The way that we tend to do this is we'll chat a little bit about what your goals are. We'll talk about hypnosis, what it is, what it isn't. And then if I feel I can help you out, I'll explain how we can get started. Sound good? Which for anybody who's a little bit tentative or hesitant around sales, by that pre-framed statement, the moment they respond to that, well, step one, clearly they're calling a business, but two, they've given me permission to make an offer at the end of that conversation. So by setting that stage ahead of time, now we've got that agreement. Well, basically, here's how this call is going to go. And I'll say some figures here, not for the sake of bragging, but just to set this in perspective. This is how in about 12 to 15 minutes time nowadays, I'm selling a $1,500 program at minimum for people. Why? Because I've set the foundation for here's what we're about to do. Which, how much is it? Well, here's how we work together. Here's how we have this conversation, which let's go even further back in this dialogue, which feel free to model this. And actually, if you go to the podcast session over on worksmarthypnosis.com, the one I did with Joseph Onesta, we talked about this, something that I've now deemed and borrowed the title from Michael Port, the book Yourself Solid. I just did it in a slightly different way, the velvet rope strategy. If you go to the Virginia Hypnosis website, the instructions are no longer call my office. It's instead schedule time for this phone strategy session. So basically now I went from getting about 20 calls a day, which is really good, but most of them were people who were just kind of curious as opposed to ready to go. So by having a bit of an application process, which feel free, go to the Virginia Hypnosis website and look at what I've got there. Just, go all the way through. Just don't schedule the session unless you want to work on something. But the benefit of that now becomes going from this many calls a day, I've now maximized not just my time, but also theirs. Because now as soon as they fill that out, ooh, baby, a whole system is now in motion. Because they've completed that, we know what they want to work on. We can start to send over some advanced information, watch this video, read this testimonial, which is just now streamlining the entire process. So what am I getting at? Rather than having to reinvent the wheel every single time, I've really made that time and everything is phrased to their benefit, which it is. You're welcome to leave a voicemail, though for faster service, go to virginiahypnosis.com/call. That's where you can schedule that specific time. I'll call you back guaranteed, which that's where we can now have that conversation, which for my time benefit, some people are still surprised that I take my own calls. Well, here's how. I'm talking to them when they're already qualified. And we've all heard the idea perhaps of the sales funnel. The difference of this is I have now positioned myself at the end of the funnel. So you only can talk to me after you've gone through those systems. The same way too, that many years ago, before I had kids, the schedule was this marathon. And I actually said to my wife at the time, hey, I'm young, let me burn out now. And that was the catchphrase as she was pregnant with our oldest. She was working a job in DC. And I went, hey, you're going to be leaving at 8 a.m, getting home at 8:30. I'll see 10 people in a day. And I was doing that 5 times, sometimes 6 days a week. I don't do that anymore. My greatest inspiration was Rose. Rose worked at the post office down the corner from where I used to live around Mount Vernon and Alexandria. And Rose just went on autopilot when she walked into the post office. Someone filling out a form. Do I sign here? Initial in the box and sign in the rectangle. Do I do that with this pen? Initial in the box and sign in the rectangle. She just say it the same way that now I'm in the office Monday through Friday. I do either a 10 o'clock, a 1 o'clock, or a 4 o'clock. I'll send you the link so you can schedule yourself. Well, what about evenings? I'm in the office Monday through Friday. I do a 10, a 1, or a 4 o'clock. And it's not that by the way, it's not that my sessions are 3 hours long. Just as we've already clarified, seeing hypnosis clients is not the only hypnosis thing that I do. So it's that in between time. That's where I'm recording the next podcast session. That's where I'm writing something for some project online. That's where I'm building out a product that's coming out sometime next year. That's where I'm starting to organize some of the steps of yet again another podcast coming out sometime, as it looks now, January 2020. But that's that time that I can now do other things that will scale up everything else, which the real message to share with you is that Virginia Hypnosis technically opened November 2009. That's about when I moved from Maryland to Virginia. And it'd be stupid to call a business in Maryland, Virginia Hypnosis. But that's where, along that line, this system that I'm now describing, this has only been for the last 18 to 24 months. So what I really want everyone to hear is play with the system, especially when it's working. Because if you keep doing it the same way, and this is what I keep running into, that there's many people out there that they're constantly working, constantly busy, but that income has plateaued. By streamlining what you do, providing a better customer service experience. I'll tell a quick story, then we'll keep going here. There's a call I got scheduled today that she was scheduled for like 3 o'clock, and just simply an email went out in the morning. You didn't clarify what you wanted to work on. Briefly, what's your goal? She said, stop smoking. Game on. From there, here came a testimonial video. Here came an article that was printed in Arlington Magazine last year. And make sure you watch this video before we chat. By the time we're on the call, she goes, oh, honey, I already watched all that. Juanita referred me. I'm ready to do this. Oh, okay. Just wanted to chat in advance. So by having those systems in place, we can build a better experience for that client rather than just better experience for ourselves.
I can't help but notice that everything that you were doing along the way just happened to be hypnosis.
Yep.
That is the business that we're in, isn't it? Oh my God.
You can't go to the floppy thing in the Dave Ellman until you've done the thing with the eyes. You can't talk about the numbers until you've technically done the floppy arm thing, if you're following that. So it's all about compounding suggestibility.
Yes. Create anticipation, create expectation, and then deliver.
Yeah.
Tell them what you're going to do. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them what you did. I mean, whatever rule you want to follow about that or cliche, that's exactly what you're doing. You're doing hypnosis all along the way.
Well, Scott Sandlin talks about the expectation to ritual ratio. That if you don't have high expectation, you need more ritual. And if you have the expectation, you don't need as much ritual. So
Amen.
Comfortably, that was a 5-minute phone call, mostly chatting about things beyond the issue itself and just going, yeah, I'm just going to sign up online while we're chatting. Do I click here? Yeah, here we go. Cool. When are you going to come in? Well, I'm going to go to San Diego next week. Oh, cool. I've been there a couple of times. And we're talking about everything other than that. Because, and this is the cool thing, by the way, when you run the business this way, the dynamic on the phone changes. It's no longer as much I really hope this works. It's instead, I am so looking forward to Tuesday, 1 o'clock next week. I've been wanting to do this for a while.
Right. Right, because you are building the anticipation of success.
Which Karen brought up something that's one of my favorite points to this, which is that I had a moment where I went to a marketing convention and I walked around going, these people are using the same language we are, but they're not apologizing for it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Which again, it's all the same language. The path from curious shopper to satisfied buyer is almost identical to stuck in the problem to now here I am in the solution. And some people often take note of this and want to look up his work when I bring this up. There's a physician, a medical doctor, more so in the psychological realm, Dr. Leo Marvin, who wrote a very important book. I see some people already writing it down, which I love because, of course, I'm now talking about the movie What About Bob? That was Richard Dreyfuss's character with the book Baby Steps onto the boat, baby steps down the dock. What are the appropriate, Dave Ellman, what's that opening wedge? How do I get that foot in the door? And I'm only ever moving to the next step. The same as the document I just held up is how I, teaching arm catalepsy in the hypnosis training. I'm not going to say, try to bend that arm and it gets even stronger until I'm looking at that thing and I already know that thing is stiff and rigid and it's not going to bend. Get the result before you go for the result. Mm-hmm. Don't ever have to ask for the sale because it's already there. Streamline the process.
Right. or do what we do really well. Thank you, Jason, for setting such a high bar and a great example.
I'd share a quick self-deprecating version of the story, which was that which, by the way, everything I'm about to say is wonderfully detailed in better language patterns in a wonderful book called Magic Words by Karen Hand, which was that someone came to my hypnosis training like 3 years ago, and she'd already been doing hypnosis for like 16 years. And she goes, I want to come to your training. My husband wants to get into the work too. And I'm going to come do the class. I've been watching your videos on YouTube. I've been listening to your podcast, and the way that you just stream of consciousness, just let the language patterns roll. It's so inspiring. And I have to learn that. And I got to the point in the class where I'm explaining basically everything as a cause effect relationship. As you do this, you start to notice that. And as that is happening, this is what that's causing. I'll censor her language. She goes, oh, that's all you're doing? Oh, I can do that. Fill in the blank. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why you're in the class. But the same patterns. It's where years ago when I first got into, learning all of this, I heard someone say that, well, from the NLP model, this was all based upon effective communication. And as soon as I heard that, it became, well, if this is effective communication, why don't we just always communicate effectively? Why don't we become aware? What's that?
Those two things are different. Effective communication and communicating effectively are two different things.
Which, let's keep rolling here. Here's point number 3 on 5 big mistakes hypnotists make, which I'm going to go in a slightly different direction than what some people would often say, because some people say you need to pick one specialty. Some people say, and yes, one of my catchphrases is around the word that's spelled N-I-C-H-E. And no, my friends, it's not a niche, it's a niche, because niche rhymes with rich. But let's go one step beyond that. And this is something that I've only been talking about really since August this year, because I've been workshopping it even further. That of not just the niche, but the micro niche, to get laser specific focused in your messaging. The perfect sales conversation begins in the problem state language of the consumer, and it ends in the expert language of the solution. So it begins in the problem language of the consumer. It ends in the expert language of the solution, which respectfully, those of you that are out there selling a hypnotic fat release program, stop that crap, because no one's looking for that. Call it weight loss, reframe it on the phone. So use their language of where they're coming into that situation. But if we can understand what a specific market is looking for, we can now deep dive a little bit of market research online. And whether you're doing this all in terms of online targeted marketing, which I do and I teach online in my programs, or even just finding the right groups to speak to. Imagine you have an amazing presentation for, like, let's say 30 minutes that really showcases what you do. And does it matter if there's 300 people or if there's 20 people in the audience? Which is better? Well, you don't know, because I'd rather you have like 10 people that are your ideal clients than 300 anybody and everybody's. Right. So to get very laser specifically focused. So I mentioned one of the categories that I spend time talking to a little while ago, talking to people who are entrepreneurs and small business owners who don't necessarily have the problem of getting more leads. Their issue is the confidence to actually convert those people, convey their message, which these are folks that are looking for public speaking, overcoming those fears. And this is the easiest formula for under promise, over deliver. So delivering exactly what they want in terms of helping them to overcome that fear, but also delivering what they need, because sometimes their messaging needs a bit of that punching up. Inside of every category, there are micro categories to talk to. I'll mention a few of the ones that I tend to work with. Endurance athletes who are following a paleo style of living. I know, right? Which, as soon as you make that statement, a quick search on Amazon, a quick search in the top articles online, I can tell you the top authors in those communities. I can talk to you about the biggest pain points specifically for men, the biggest pain points specifically for women in those communities. The other benefit is, well, that's something that I used to do, and I already know how to talk about it. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. The other benefit too is I already know what they're looking at online. So because of that, I speak a common shared language. And this is one of those overriding principles that I talk about too, which is that be the expert, be the peer rather than the vendor. That now I'm not just the guy trying to sell you a package of sessions. I'm the guy who perhaps in some respect did the thing already that you're trying to do. It can identify here are the pitfalls of what you're often going through there. To get laser specific, it doesn't have to be your own experience. I've told the story before. I think we talked about this last time. I worked with this guy named Philip who wanted to curb his sugar cravings because he was diabetic. And we do the work. Sugar cravings are gone. He actually had some sweet things and he goes, I didn't even like them this time. That was cool. And it wasn't even my goal, but I dropped 10 pounds of body fat. Hey, I saw your video camera in the other room. Do you want a video testimonial? Oh, okay, if you have to.
Right.
Which the biggest fault would be to take anything, look at everything as an asset is really the message of this, that here comes this testimonial video. And like I referenced earlier today, I was able to send specific targeted messages about the Stop Smoking program to that one person of people who have already gone through it. Here's someone talking about their public speaking issues. Here's the one biggest issue that men who are in that endurance training issue often run into in terms of body image. And by the way, the guy who wrote the book about that subject is one of the blurbs in the back of my book. Yeah, strategery. So looking at how all of it comes together. So look at any market, and the more specific you can possibly get, the more targeted your message becomes. Now, where many people get afraid of this now becomes, well, if I'm talking about that, what about the fact that, yeah, look online, I train virtual gastric band for Sheila Granger, and clearly that's one of my offerings. And I didn't just talk about that. Well, the people who find me by way of the stream of the paleo stuff, the diabetic stuff, may continue their search online and go, you know what, but I want this thing. The same way that here's someone who's coming in, here's someone I just worked with last month, that the whole issue is they finally diagnosed the specific condition that she was having, where the first phase of it is food sensitivities. Let's just kind of get that in order to follow the advice of her doctor. And can I be the chameleon to now listen to what her needs are and let that become part of my session? Well, of course I can. And the biggest discovery is by getting up and talking about one specific thing, whether it's a networking event, whether it's a talk you give in the community, whether it's a Facebook Live. It doesn't matter what the platform is because it's all going to change again 10 years from now. Some new platform is going to go out there, and we all tend to congregate on Zoom right now, but give it 10 years. Sorry, Zoom, you're probably going away. The same as Amazon, the same as Facebook, the same as I bought my new phone case at the Woolworth. Purple. So that message that if you understand the psychology beneath the process, if I can speak your language, if I can ask you questions, meta-model questioning, if I can ask you questions in a way that drive you inside to think differently about the issue than the way you were thinking about it before, we're already in sync. This thing has sold itself from a business perspective. So consider, this is the benefit of everything on a website comes down to search engine juice, as Google doesn't want me to call it. But this is the value of having articles on your website. I do podcasting. This is the value of having videos. If you can find the words that people are searching, those are the names of your videos online.
Nice.
Right. All of that you're talking about is about driving business, whether it's the hypnosis business or the training business or anything else. It's all about driving business. Does Work Smart Business teach one to do that?
Yeah, so in the book, Work Smart Business, that's a little bit more general community in terms of, it was a book that the phrase became, it was not written for the hypnosis world, but the hypnosis world benefits from it. So this was actually written for the standard entrepreneur in mind. And the mission statement in the first draft of the book, and kind of maintained through it, was that, sorry, I'm in a world where we have to convince people we're not going to make them bark like dogs and cluck like chickens. And if you read a description of what we actually do, it's freaking weird. And if I could have built the business that I've built with all these different streams coming in together and make it work in a world where I have to inoculate about what I do before I do it. So the audience I'll hold it up here again. For the audience for Work Smart Business, you're the accountant. You don't have those barriers. You're the real estate agent. You're the acupuncturist. You're something that already there's, a little bit different approach to. So this was written for that business community outside of ours. I do have a program, Hypnotic Business Systems, which is my whole all access pass to my hypnosis business training. which I'll make it brief. Basically, anything you can find linked to on worksmarthypnosis.com. Ooh, promo codes. Plug in virtual in all caps. That'll knock 10% off everything. Which that gives you a bit of a roadmap and some done-for-you marketing campaigns rather than having to reinvent the wheel.
Nice, nice.
Did I derail us off of the more things that go wrong?
You popped in a perfect transition. Let's talk about point number 4. We're in for the home stretch.
Excellent.
Which we've kind of already talked about, because it's where, again, if you understand the psychology beneath the process and what drives that language, this is where, again, it doesn't matter what the platform is. This is my answer when people go, yeah, but I'm not a computer person, or I don't, want to have a whole bunch of different websites. And really, I just want to do one thing. I just want to see a bunch of clients. I taught a class last year and the year before at HypnoThoughts called Hypnotic Products, which we eventually put that into the business systems program. And my favorite moment was the end of the first year. Someone came up, she gives me a big hug, and she goes, that was one of the most interesting, fascinating, and inspiring things I've ever been to. But this only reinforced, I just want to see a lot of clients. She goes, I'm seeing 35 people a week, and I love it. And I'm going to do it a little bit better based on some of your strategies, but I'm going to apply it over to this thing. So what I'm specifically referencing is point number 4 is to think of yourself as a service business. In 2019 and beyond, you are a media company first and a products and services company second. So what I mean by that is that in our modern era, people are looking for information. People nowadays, the attention spans are shorter, and they're looking for that opportunity to learn more before they make any decision. So phone case, I'm on Amazon looking at the reviews before I buy anything. And this one shows up and I don't like it. So I ordered 2 more because Amazon will let you return things. How do I make those decisions? Based on the reviews. Here's the moment. Let's take a moment and talk about funnels for a second. Let's expand it beyond where most people consider funnels to be, because there's top of funnel, there's middle of funnel, and there's bottom of funnel. Top of funnel is just that entry point. But imagine now middle of funnel is now the decision. Let's say, I don't do this, but here's an example. There are some people who offer sessions, one-offs, or perhaps buy a program. That's a decision people are making when they're already deeper into that system. Then from their bottom of funnel is, what time do I schedule? So to look at, we need pieces of information for all these different aspects. If you do a search online for me, I own the whole search, and you find everything that I do. I'm transparent in the fact of, here's the book, here's the podcast. I've had many clients find me because of the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast, which is always funny because they always say the same thing. That was interesting. I'm not the audience, am I? I'm like, well, it's trade specific. Not that there's any secrets, but it's FUBU. So it's for us, by us. It's going out specifically for this community. But they see that and they go, oh, this is the guy who's training other hypnotists. And that's something that program helps to serve for me. Articles that I've had published online are things that have been written about me. So let me put this into a context that everybody can put into use immediately. The biggest challenge that people often face is the willingness to walk away from what's working, to do something else. There's a moment where I saw fear in someone's eyes when I said this at the HypnoThoughts convention back in August. She goes, how do you find the time to do this stuff? And I go, because I schedule time to do these things. So if all you did right now was go into your calendar and perhaps decide Thursday morning from 9 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to produce something. Notice I haven't even yet said what that something is going to be. Because if you look at what I do, there's extreme strategic skills behind some of the stuff, even in terms of, Karen, you brought up, the aspect of being family person and stepping away from the work. And because of that, I am mindful around certain things that I do, because I'm not the person popping up every single day on Facebook Live. Why? Because if you want to interact with me, it's going to come out on Thursday with the podcast with everyone else. I'm not there tagging every big social thing that I do, because I like to go home at the end of the day as well. So I don't do a lot of blogging. Hey, check out the podcast I did with Angie Hernandez. She had a great whole conversation about that. Instead, what have I done? I've done videos, I've done the podcast, and I've been published in various sources and scheduled time to write a book. So the beauty of this is produce media. You get to decide for yourself what that thing is that you want to do. And look at everything as if like a muscle. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The best advice I got in terms of video came from Richard Nongard, which was don't go back and delete the videos you shot 8 years ago. Where one, I was maybe 40 pounds heavier, and two, I was saying things I don't agree with anymore. Because now people can look, I get this feedback even from the training side. They go, I can see your lineage. I can see where you came up with your own opinions. I can see where you changed your mind. The fact of we're currently rebuilding the Virginia Hypnosis website, and once things are in motion a bit more, I'm going to be shooting a lot more new videos for that site. Because over the years, there's been a blending of style that with Virginia Hypnosis, it used to be the blue shirt, purple tie, professionally dressed. Now I'm wearing a shirt like this in the office with a jacket over it. Work Smart Hypnosis for a while kind of became the more I'm wearing a black t-shirt and dropping the F word occasionally in videos. People responded better. And there's been a blending of the two styles over the years to go, the line from most political campaigns, yeah, this is a person I can hang out with. Or better yet, from our language, this person's human. This person's not weird. Which is a statement I heard from my 4 o'clock appointment today. She goes, do you want to know why I called you? It was our 4th appointment. Why? She goes, there were some creepy people I found doing a search online. And I saw your video. She found a video of me, some people have seen this, doing instant inductions in the back of a minivan with my daughter when she was 2 years old. Little 2-year-old Claire's going, Daddy, 1, 2, 3, sleep, wake up. Which we'll let her say wake up because it's cute. But she goes, I saw that and just went, yeah, I can work with this guy. So if all you did out of a result of this call, block off that time. Block that time off in such a way that no one else can have that time. At the end of the year, if your platform was just doing a quick 3-minute video, which means you can screw it up 40 times over and get the last take good. This is why my videos look so polished. You only see the last take. That if you just took that time once a week, at the end of the year, you'd have 50 plus videos online. If all you did was write out, an article, well, easiest format is the same thing we're doing right now. It's not an article. It's not a list. It's a listicle. Here are the 5 big mistakes that most hypnotists make. So they're not producing media. They're looking at themselves as either being in the business or not working at the time. So to define that time, and think of an old-timey wagon wheel, the center of that wheel where all the spokes go in, that's the hub. Define what that hub is going to be. So I do quite a bit on Facebook. I do absolutely nothing beyond liking things that friends of mine have put up on Twitter or Instagram. So I've decided this is the mechanism that I'm going to use. I do email, I do webinars occasionally. I do the same for my clients as well. Nowadays, I'm kind of in a funny little pocket of time, which is that most of my business nowadays is referral based. So it's that game of going, yes, I want to rebuild the website, yet the website's not really the thing that's coming in. Here's a guy who came in this morning and he goes, I've never seen your business card. I go, I haven't put them out yet. Just because, again, the business cards serve the purpose of going in the hands of people who have already worked with me to give to other folks, which my business card breaks the rule. In the back of it, there's the laundry list. Reduce anxiety, overcome fear, stop smoking, because that's the audience who's now seeing that. That doesn't need to be laser focused. But again, if you did one thing, block that time off, make that time sacred. The same way that here's people who watch a television show when it launches. That movie's coming out and they buy tickets for opening night. Some show is coming into town and Adam Lambert's going to be in Chicago and Karen is absolutely there. And that's not where you're going to wake up and go, it's raining. No, you're going to be there standing in the rain and I know it.
I stood in an Oklahoma heat wave for 4 hours once for Adam Lambert. You better believe it, I would do that. But
the coffee mug is the strings attached Weird Al Yankovic tour. So, okay, so yours is cooler.
One of the things you said, Jason, that's so important is, or one of the things I heard was diversify. You've got to do more than just see clients. But you didn't say be Jason Linett. You didn't say you must do videos. You said if you want to blog, blog. Or if you want to do this thing, do this thing. If you want to, whatever you want to do, but set aside time and do it was pretty much the important message.
Right. And it's where, too, we can make use of this over time. There's a moment 2010 or 2011, I was writing a column for a local newspaper that, wouldn't you believe the luck, they didn't have a health and wellness column. And this really nice person reached out to them to say, hey, I'll write the health and wellness column. And they go, that's great. Could we also count on you for advertising as well? And I go, well, what's the rate? And I was expecting this number, and it was that. So I went, sure, just don't put it on the same page as my article. There's a local health-related fake magazine that's been hounding me, and I'm going, I know, because it reeks of advertising, because the ad is on the same page as the article. If you'll break that rhythm, you know, it's actually pretty cheap. If you'll break the rhythm, I'll do it at least once to see how it goes. That Arlington Magazine article that popped up, not many people saw it, but it's the value that I've had putting it into use ever since, which again, define the way that you want to put that message out there, and then consistency is really what makes that work. 3 weeks ago, when Scott Sandlin was on the podcast, I had the ultimate moment occur, which proved that people were listening, not just because I can look at the numbers, but the episode was late. And by 9 o'clock, I had a bunch of text messages and emails going, is everything okay? Then by 11 a.m., I had messaged the editors, and they loaded the episode. And by 1 o'clock, I have even more emails, because for the first time ever, the podcast company, they do a lot of podcast editing, they put an episode of something like beards and Bitcoin, which, knowing my sense of humor, there were a few people who listened to the entire episode waiting for me to chime in at the end. And like, no, they just loaded the wrong episode, which great customer service. The podcast editing company goes, yeah, you're not going to pay us for 3 months. Sorry. You know, but you know, you're doing something right when people go, where is it? You know, and to have the video. And again, the greatest business lesson I ever learned came from watching The Simpsons. Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You may remember me from. And the ability to go back to the vault. And here is this article I wrote for that newspaper locally about public speaking fears. I'm still using that now, nearly 8 or 9 years later. It doesn't matter what the timestamp, what the date is on it. You know, here's an asset that I can use over and over and over. The same as here's a testimonial letter. Which really builds us perfectly into this final point, which is not just that of building systems, which is what we've been talking about, but it's not just about diversifying your income, because this is a conversation that popped up a couple of times this year. People go, can you really make a decent living just seeing clients? And just in that moment, I pulled out my phone and said, let's assume this rate per session. Let's assume even at minimum 12 appointments a week. Let's be extremely conservative and say 40 weeks a year, which maybe it's vacation time, maybe it's time you're off at conventions. And I ran the numbers, and even with a rate of like $175 per session, we were coming in consistently like $90,000 and up. So you can earn a great living just seeing clients, and that be it. I think it's more fun to have multiple streams, and the ability where I could take the week off and other things are still going. But really the message here is diversify how people can find you. Because here's the real message in 2019. People are not always looking at their devices. Most of your traffic nowadays is happening on devices this small. Most people are doing their research when they're not in a place where they can make a buying decision, which is the most polite way I can say they're on the toilet and they're looking at their phone. So they're looking at your information where it's not appropriate, hopefully, to pick up the phone and call you. But instead, they're looking at it where they're going to come back. They're going to do that search once again. And the more you can appear, the better. Mm-hmm. The more that you can the phrase is just be the person who does that thing. There's an interview that stuck with me, and this kind of became a theme of a lot of what I do. It was an interview with Penn Jillette from Penn & Teller. And in the intro to this statement, he goes, we have one of the longest running shows in Las Vegas. We own the theater. When you're driving down the Las Vegas Strip, we have the biggest marquee. The entire side of the Rio Hotel and Casino is Penn and Teller, right next to each other. There's billboards all over town. They sell out the show virtually every single night. Sure. They're at the height of their career. And what he said next was, but if we don't turn off what's working, to then fly out to New York and do an appearance on, Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. If we don't shut the show down for a week to be, as I was just in Australia, to do the Sydney Opera House for 2 weeks. If we don't close the show down at the time for him to do 2 or 3 seasons of Celebrity Apprentice, which is perfectly timed for Teller to direct The Tempest on Broadway. Cool. If we don't do these things, if suddenly I don't host a game show for 1 season, Teller gets up and does a TED Talk. The guy who doesn't talk does a TED Talk. If we don't do that stuff, people go, whatever happened to those guys?
Yeah.
When already clearly we're at the height of everything that we do. So the biggest fault that people often have, if anyone here has ever been a member of like BNI, Business Networking International, this is kind of the cycle of those people who would join those groups and then quit because they get a little cocky and go, hey, this is going great. I don't need any clients from this anymore, but they're not doing anything else.
Yeah.
So it's not the fault of the networking group. It's not even the fault of that specific chapter. It's that stream dried up. And it's where over the years, I have had some amazing referral sources.
Yeah.
And then they moved. And it's where my phrasing is, the more we're all successful, the more we're all successful. This next story is completely inappropriate, but as he put it, I was helping people, so it's okay. There was, when my office used to be in Old Town Alexandria, laser eye surgeon. He would do the LASIK eye correction surgery, and the next thing out of his mouth was, hey, you're a smoker, right? Yeah, you cannot smoke at all this week because if you do, it's going to feel like your retinas are burning, which no, it won't. And he put my card in their hand and said, call this guy. He'll make it a priority to get you in. Which I'm going, is that true? He goes, yeah, it's true enough. I'm like, but I loved him. He was sending so many people. Here's referral source that I've currently got that amazing. Again, for the Stop Smoking, plastic surgeon. Now, mind you, this is not necessarily cosmetic plastic surgeon. This is more, they've done the major surgery and there's excess skin. This is the burn victim, and they're doing things to make things look as close to back to normal as possible. And I mean, he got very specific to go, smoke, fire, it's burning oxygen, it's taking the moisture out of the skin. And the skin, when we stitch it back together, doesn't fuse right. These people medically have to stop, not just because I want my work to look good. Here was the back before the marketplace, the health insurance broker who was going, here are your numbers. If you call Jason, this is what your numbers will be instead. And it's where these are relationships that I built over time, but suddenly this one moves. Suddenly this one retires, or whatever reason, things just fade away. To not be diversified in how those people will come in. So here's the article that was written about me in a local magazine, which, as I said to them politely, I think, unfortunately, you're repeating your 60,000 issues distribution. I don't think people are reading it because 0 people called from that article. Oh, we're so sorry. No, it's okay. Because what I've done with it, it's definitely been worth the experience. I love it. You know, to look at anything and go, I can keep using this now. But, you know, to not be, to break away from being dependent on one specific stream. Here are people I'm sure you've had on the program that, you know, here was this group session they were doing, but now suddenly that was no longer an option. The way is, the inspiration for this goes back to a stage hypnotist I knew about 12 years ago that 100% of his business was coming from one agent who then suddenly passed away. And no one in the family wanted to run the business. And suddenly he went, I got to figure out how to get shows. You know, to look at how we bring those people in. It's not always a linear path. Sometimes they have to, the old catchphrase was the marketing rule of 7. People had to see your message 5 to 7 times. Doesn't that number sound familiar? They had to see that message 5 to 7 times to then clearly go, this is the person to go to. They've found your website. They found some article. This is the value of just creating those assets, producing that media, getting laser specific with your messaging, making that time and realizing that here's the part that you need to do yourself. And let me make everything easy for you with a strategy you can put to use right away. My highest performing videos right now are being shot on my phone.
Yeah.
Where I'm walking around. The story of this was my parents own a rental property down in the Outer Banks part of North Carolina, Nags Head, Kitty Hawk, where they first flight. And they're wedding photographers. So of course they connected with their friends in the industry, and the professional videographer came in, shot this beautiful promo for this rental house a couple of blocks from the beach, and no one was renting the house. Until I took my phone, stuck it in my dad's hand and said, hold it like this, walk around backwards and tell stories about the house. The house is now booked upwards of about a year in advance.
Nice.
Everything comes back to relationships. Everything comes down to looking down the lens of that camera and talking to it as if it was one person. So as much as they said, don't go back and delete stuff that you've done before, if you're playing the royal we in your videos and it's just you, stop it. Hey, I'm so excited to meeting with you soon. Here's how we're going to work together. As soon as you're in the door, this is what we're going to do. And here's some stories of people who have come in before. Have a conversation. It always comes back to relationships.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed in the last 100 years. That's not going to change in the next. So resist that temptation to get bogged down by some of the technical things we've talked about so far, because it's really where you define what your message is. You define who your audience is going to be. And some of you might even find yourself talking to people who aren't even looking online. I've got a good friend who shutters his website every couple of weeks because he goes, I'm at capacity with the people I like working with. And he just redirects the website to a YouTube video. And then sometimes switches it back over where we get to run the business at the capacity that we want. Just because you can doesn't mean you have to, is that bigger message.
Jason, I've got to tell you, when you're talking about being visible, you impressed me on a particular time that just completely took me by surprise, and I didn't really know you very well at the time, and all of a sudden I was playing Words with Friends with Melissa Tears, and all of a sudden you showed up on my screen between every move, and I was like,
I can see out the other side as well.
How do you do that? How do you get to be on Words with Friends? And I know
that is actually a function with Facebook marketing.
Yeah.
So the Facebook ads portal, there's an option to go, which I'll give a slight note to this, by the way, for those of you that track these types of things and even make use of it yourself. I teach inside of Hypnotic Business Systems, step by step, how to set up the Facebook campaigns and show you some of actually not just what I did, but also what's working now. But I'll share an exception here of something that I do. There's an option in the Facebook ad portal, which is to allow it to show in the partner network is what I think it's called, or something along that nature. They keep changing the name every couple of weeks. So the partner network is where, in almost as playful ego, I have screenshots of me on HuffingtonPost.com, FoxNews.com, Words with Friends, pops up on Instagram, which is Facebook, pops up on all these sorts of media websites. So basically the platform of that is Words with Friends and many others, because I love you, Michael, but you're the cheap bastard who didn't give them $1.99 for the paid version of the app. It's okay. But where, because you're in that free version of it, you're seeing the ads, and the way that they're getting paid is that Facebook is paying them to allow them to show the ads. That's what that is. I'll share with you a little nuance though. If it's something I'm doing in terms of promoting a training, whether it's something that I'm doing, or I do hosted events at times. I've got David Snyder coming to the DC area coming up in November, and Karen Hand's going to be there. DavidSnyderDC.com. It's on sale this week, and then it's about to jump. We're actually about a month away, so we're going to play the game. It's going to bump up $100 every week until then. So get your spot now. But for things like that, if I'm talking to the hypnosis community, that's when I do that related, promotional network. And the reason I do that is kind of that be everywhere mindset, but also as much as, yes, I'm earning money when people buy my trainings and attend my courses. I'm also doing that to kind of show you can get your message out there in a much more direct way than you've given yourself credit for. Now, when I'm talking to smaller communities, so like when I'm doing my ad campaign for public speaking, when I'm doing a paid ad campaign, which again, diversified, this is not the only way people come in. If I'm doing an ad campaign for clients, in that category, I turn off the related campaigns. And I'm only making sure I'm showing up when people are scrolling through their stream and looking at photos of Karen at the next Adam Lambert event. So that way I'm staying on one place rather than the be everywhere. So if I'm speaking to this community, I'm everywhere. But if I'm speaking to potential clients, because also it's a tighter niche, I know you do an outstanding course in terms of being the virtual hypnotist. I see people around the world. I'm allowed to be a little greedy and say, I think it's more fun to have them come here. That, and I also just bought the new office and I want to use it.
Sure enough. Well, I tell you what, we're almost at the end of our time, and there's a couple things that I wanted to get in. You just mentioned David Snyder, for example. You've got this coming up in November there at Virginia. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, he's doing the conversational hypnosis, real world conversational hypnosis masterclass. So that's a 3-day event. Off the top of my head, let's go middle of November, davidsnyderdc.com. November 16, 17, 18. Yeah, because then we're doing the Train the Trainer for the ICBCH right after that in the same spot in Springfield, Virginia. So that's what's coming up. I would mention my next Work Smart Hypnosis Live, but that happens in 2 days. But hey, Fran's here, so he'll be there for that. So he's still around. And then really the easiest thing to do is just subscribe to the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast. That comes out every single Thursday. Last week we had Maggie Wild out of Australia, which she's someone that a lot of people, at least over here, don't yet know, but what's the term? Damn, amazing stuff. This week, Thursday on the podcast, in a similar listicle format, we've got Richard Nongard talking about the 7 pieces of hypnotic research that every modern hypnotist should know, which buckle up, everybody, because the first one is that classic Alfred Berrios study, the one that everyone quotes, that 6 sessions of hypnosis were like 93% effective, this many sessions of psychoanalysis, and this one. And Richard directly quotes the moment that Alfred Berrios hopped up on hypnothoughts.com and said, everybody, you're misinterpreting my research. Stop repeating that one. However, we're not just here to tear down that study, as even the guy who did the study did, but we're also going to give you the one that's going to replace it as well. So that comes out on the Work Smart Hypnosis podcast this week, Thursday. Yay. So check that one out. You just basically subscribe. That's where you're going to hear everything that's going on. And if anyone wants to check out my online communities, there's Hypnotic Workers. I didn't want to be the guy with the regression course, with the Dave Ellman course, with the resource peak performance course, the Facebook marketing stuff, and all of that. So basically everything hypnosis is hypnoticworkers.com. Everything business is hypnoticbusinesssystems.com. And if you plug in, again, the word virtual in all caps as the promo code, make sure you click apply. That'll take a nice 10% off as a thank you. Karen Handis, my favorite hypnotist, was a little too long as a promo code, so we just went with virtual.
and
Love that.
To add on to it,
don't tell the others.
There's Work Smart Business, the book that you've been holding up from time to time. Lovely book, available through Amazon and I'm sure on your website as well. Is that right, Jason?
Actually, we're just keeping that direct on Amazon, and I keep getting the question about when are you going to put out the audiobook on Audible? And the answer is that when you pick up the book, it actually gives you instructions inside to get a free audio download of it.
Okay. And if anybody wants to contact you specifically, is there an address or what's the best way for people to get?
Easiest way to track me down. I'm a little bit more, again, knowing your strategies, knowing your systems. I've had to become a little bit more direct in my language at times to go, Facebook message, if I don't respond right away, it gets lost in the fold, the same as a text message. So really email is the best way to track me down, because if it comes through at a time I can't respond, systems, I can flag it and I can come back to it later. So I'm easy to track down. I'm Jason and I'm in Virginia and I do hypnosis. So the email address is jason@virginiahypnosis.com.
Nice.
Which, by the way, that's the same thing I say to people out in the community, followed by, do you really need a business card, or do you know how to find me now? Be memorable.
There you go. And
right.
if you want to train personally with him, of course, you can join us in Chicago in a couple of weeks at Mid-America. And Richard Nongard will be there. Joseph Onesta will be there. Michael Watson will be there. I'll be there. You should be there, too. There'll be lots of great people. And Jason was doing a lot of name dropping tonight. A lot of those people are going to be there at Mid-America. So
I call that referencing.
So again, just sorry.
What?
Just to remind everybody, for tonight, the recording will be available tomorrow by about noon. It will be on the ICANN BHA website. It will be on the Virtual Chapter Facebook group. It will be on the Virtual Chapter YouTube channel as well. So I know you're going to want to see it again, because there's a lot of things that you probably didn't write down. So check it out. Jason, really thank you very much for being with us today. And
let's throw in one last bonus for the people who stuck around the full hour and 31 minutes. If you send me an email with the number 50 in the subject line, to Jason at virginiahypnosis.com. There's a thing I'm currently working on releasing, but I'll give you a preview of it, is that I went into the entire 10-year search history of virginiahypnosis.com, and I found all the keywords that people actually use to find my stuff.
Wow.
Buckle up, because I got the full 1,000. Those are going to be releasing sometime later. But send an email that just says 50 in the subject line. Don't put anything else in the subject line. This way I can flag them all and just have someone else respond to you. But we'll send over that list of those top 50 keywords, which, yes, one of them is Jason Linett. You probably don't want to use that one to lead to your website.
Okay.
But most of the others will apply. So there's
All
a
right.
nice little bonus at the end of it.
So Jason, are you ready for the great send-off? The accolade?
Uh-oh.
Oh, because here's what we're going to do.
I did floss for this, so I guess I am ready.
Well, that's great, because what we're going to do is we're going to unmute everyone.
Floss,
So
not-
in a great
Okay.
cacophony of love and appreciation, they can all wish you good well and good night at the same time. So thanks again for being
Sounds-
here, and we'll
that
look
sounds
forward to you
sticky.
soon.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting.
Jason, see you in November.
Thank you, Jason.
Bye.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
Okay, now everybody again in alphabetical order.
First to
We'll do
last
reverse.
name.
Wendy Merritt, you can go first.